Greetings and welcome to another Pokemon 2019 or Pokemon Journeys anime episode review. This time I'm talking about episode 102, so let's get to it. Before I get to the episode itself, however, I do want to point out that in this episode, the opening was once again updated to include more of Goh's Pokemon. But this time, they did not add a new Pokemon that Goh caught recently. Instead, they added an old Pokemon, Goh's Durant, who was added to the section that shows Goh's Pokemon from the Unova region. I guess that they forgot to include the Durant in the first two versions of Opening 4, which is understandable since Goh has way too many Pokemon. It's difficult to keep track of them all. But onto the actual episode now. Episode 102 begins in Ceres Institute. Ash enters the lab all excited because he knows that Goh received his next trial mission for Project Mew. However, while Ash is thrilled because of this, Goh is instead depressed, which shows that he is not happy with the mission he got this time. So Ash approaches Goh wondering what's wrong. Goh says that this latest mission is meant to test his battling skills and his cooperation. Ash is even more excited when he hears that the mission involves battling. Goh then says that the battling part is fine. The problem is the cooperation part, which is not surprising, since I knew that this would be the case, and I said as much in my preview discussion for this episode. Ash wonders what Goh means by cooperation, and Goh says that the mission is a raid battle against the legendary Pokemon Articuno. Ash's excitement reaches its peak when he hears this, but Goh says that Ash's excitement does not help. Now, I also said in my preview discussion for this episode that perhaps this time Goh would not get to choose a mission like in previous episodes, because why would he pick a mission that he does not like? But since Goh already has the mission when Ash enters the lab, it is unclear if this time he had a choice as well. But judging by what we see later in the episode, I think that this time there was only one mission, meaning that there was no choice. So Ash then says that Goh did participate in a raid battle against Golurk, and this gives Goh some confidence. Ash then says to Goh, with me helping you, it will be fine. This gives Goh even more confidence, and he says that he now feels like he can accomplish the mission. I do want to mention that Ash could have also reminded Goh of the battle against Zapdos, because initially, Ash and Goh battled Zapdos in a raid battle alongside Team Rocket, meaning that Goh has been in 2 raid battles thus far. This reminder of the battle against Zapdos would have given Goh even more confidence, not only because it would remind him of another raid battle he took part in, but also because he already battled a legendary Pokemon in a raid battle, and a legendary bird just like Articuno at that. So this would have been the more fitting reminder since it matches Goh's current mission. Since Goh now believes that he can accomplish his mission, he uses his Pokedex to see where he can find Articuno. The Pokedex says that Articuno can be found in snowy mountains with permafrost. I do want to point out that in Japanese, Articuno has a very creative name, which is also the name of a Dragon Ball Z villain. Frieza! So Goh wonders where he should look for Articuno. Professor Cerise says that Goh should go to the Seafoam Islands. Krisa says that the Seafoam Islands have 2 adjacent mountains. Ren adds that there is a permafrost cave inside the islands that connects the 2 mountains. Professor Cerise then says that it would not be strange to find Articuno on these islands. Now, of course, the Seafoam Islands are the place where you can find Articuno in the games. Goh says thank you for all the information, and he decides to travel to the Seafoam Islands with Ash. The episode then cuts to the Seafoam Islands, where Ash and Goh begin their search for Articuno. The first thing they find is a natural bridge made of rock. Ash and Goh make their way across the bridge, and they are soon attacked by a Golbat. Ash decides to have Pikachu attack Golbat with Thunderbolt. But Goh intervenes so that he can deal with Golbat himself by using his favorite strategy, throwing a Pokeball, which predictably catches Golbat no problem. I do want to mention here that in the games, you can indeed find the Golbat in the Seafoam Islands. Therefore, the anime is being faithful to the games here. So Ash and Goh continue their search for Articuno, and they soon end up in a natural maze full of diverging paths, dead ends, aggressive Geodude that emerge from the ground, and they also find a boy and his Typhlosion. The boy tells Ash and Goh that he has been lost for ages. Goh wonders if the boy is here because of Project Mew as well, and the boy reveals that yes, he is a challenger, which is someone who is trying to get into Project Mew by completing trial missions. I don't think that this terminology has been used before to refer to those that want to join the project, but maybe I just forgot about it. Goh says that he is also a challenger, so he and the boy should work together. But the boy says that his Pokemon are all weakened from battling Geodude, therefore he cannot have a raid battle with Articuno like this. Ash wonders if the boy is giving up, and the boy says that he has no choice. If only the boy had a couple of potions on him. So Ash and Goh continue their search for Articuno, but the only thing they find is more dead ends, Geodude, and challengers that are exhausted and that refuse to team up with Goh because of this. I imagine that they all ended up like this because of the Geodude, which seem to be not only relentless, but they also seem to be all over the place, waiting for someone to ambush. They are basically natural hazards. Also, I do want to mention here that you cannot find Geodude in the Seafoam Islands in the games. So the anime is not being faithful to the games here, especially since there are a lot of Geodude. So Ash and Goh eventually find a pointy rock made of ice or made of crystal. Curious Grookey decides to hit this rock with its stick, which generates a nice sound that echoes through the area. This gives Goh an idea. He sends out Inteleon and he has Grookey hit the pointy rock again, so that Inteleon can use the sound that is generated to find the correct path through the maze using echolocation. Inteleon and Grookey repeat this same strategy several times, which leads them all to the entrance of a cave. Goh thanks Inteleon and he withdraws both Inteleon and Grookey. Ash and Goh then venture into the cave, hoping that they will find Articuno. The first thing they find inside the cave is a Graveler. I guess that it should not be surprising that there is a Graveler here, considering all the Geodude that are on the islands. Though just like with Geodude, you cannot find Graveler in the Seafoam Islands in the games. So Graveler proceeds to use Rollout to charge Ash and Goh, who try to run away, but Goh pushes Ash out of the way and he throws a Pokeball at Graveler, which catches it. Now Goh probably pushed Ash out of concern for Ash, but it does look more like Goh is pushing Ash because Ash is in the way of the capture, since Goh does not say look out or anything like this, and he has a serious expression instead of a concerned one. This is just wrong. Come on Goh, have some respect. But regardless of Goh's reason for pushing Ash out of the way, Ash is still happy because Goh captured the Graveler. Though Ash oddly wonders if this is Goh's second capture of the day. Really, Ash? You have been with Goh the entire time. You should know that yes, this is Goh's second capture. Goh says that yes, it is his second capture and that he is on a roll. That at this rate, not even Articuno will be a match for him. Whoa there, you are getting a bit carried away. Don't let two random captures that required no effort whatsoever get to your head. So Ash and Goh are curious about the opening in the ground left by Graveler. Goh decides that they should make their way to the lower level via this opening. Goh sends out Caterpie, who uses String Shot, which Ash and Goh use to climb down to the lower level. Now, when I saw Caterpie, I laughed, because really, Goh, you are here to battle Articuno, a legendary Pokemon, and from your vast collection of Pokemon, you decide to bring Caterpie along? Like, seriously? Sure, Caterpie does come in handy here, but still, why would you bring a Caterpie along on a mission to battle a legendary Pokemon? Now, I have nothing against Caterpie, it's just that it baffles me that Goh would bring a Caterpie along for this mission. In the lower level, Ash and Goh find Horace, who has his Bayleaf use Vine Whip to attack a Cloyster. Goh is happy to see Horace, and he is also surprised because Horace's Chikorita evolved into Bayleaf. Goh then reveals that his Raboot evolved as well, and he sends out Cinderace. I guess that Goh just has to tell everyone that met Raboot that Raboot evolved, since he told Sophocles as well in episode 96. So while everyone is distracted, Cloyster breaks free from the Vine Whip. Cinderace uses Spirable to incapacitate Cloyster. Horace then says to Goh, it's your chance to catch Cloyster. Goh says then I won't hold back, and he catches Cloyster. Now I know that Horace gave permission to Goh, but still, it feels like Goh is stealing Cloyster from Horace, which is just wrong and selfish. Goh pushed Ash out of the way to catch Graveler, and now he is stealing someone else's capture. Is there anything Goh won't do in order to catch a Pokemon? Also, you can indeed find the Cloyster in the Seafoam Islands in the games, so the anime is back on track here. Goh is happy because he captured his third Pokemon, and he thanks Horace for the capture. At least Goh has some decency. In response, Horace says that Goh's intervention was helpful. Horace says that he was about to drop out before he got the chance to meet Articuno, which I feel is an exaggeration since Cloyster only broke free from the Vine Whip. It's not like Cloyster was about to defeat Bayleaf, or about to hurt Horace. Plus, Horace has more Pokemon besides Bayleaf. And in any case, why use a Grass-type Pokemon against an Ice-type Pokemon? Though Cloyster is part Water-type, so using Bayleaf against it is not too unreasonable. Since Horace said that he is here to find Articuno, Goh wonders if Horace is a challenger as well. Horace says that yes, he is, and because he knows Goh, Horace assumes that Goh is a challenger as well, which Goh confirms. Though Goh wonders why Horace is trying to join Project Mew, since the Pokemon Horace wants to find is Celebi. Ash is surprised when he hears that Horace is looking for Celebi. So Goh takes this chance to introduce Ash to Horace. And Ash introduces himself and Pikachu, while Horace introduces himself and Bayleaf. Ash and Horace then shake hands. I love that Pikachu and Cinderace greet Bayleaf, who greets them back. Ash then wonders why Horace is in Project Mew, if he wants to find Celebi. Horace says that he decided to track down every Psychic-type Pokemon, including Mew, hoping that this would lead him to Celebi, since Celebi is a Psychic and Grass-type Pokemon. Ash says that Horace sounds like Goh, and indeed, their objectives are very similar. Goh says to Horace, we should both do our best, so that we can both become chasers, and Horace agrees. Now Horace himself said that Celebi is a Psychic and Grass-type Pokemon, so I wonder why his objective is to track down every Psychic-type Pokemon, and not to track down every Psychic and Grass-type Pokemon. Sure, Celebi's primary type is Psychic, which is probably why Horace is focusing on Psychic-type Pokemon. But still, I think that it would be more fitting if he focuses on both Psychic and Grass-type Pokemon. Now, he does have Bayleaf, which is a Grass-type Pokemon. So I guess that he still does give some importance to Grass-type Pokemon. And since he is from the Johto region, it's likely that he chose Chikorita as his starter Pokemon. This decision was likely influenced by Celebi. So Ash, Goh, and Horace make their way deeper into the cave. Horace mentions that he ran into a lot of trainers that dropped out of the mission because they got lost in the maze and they were attacked by Pokemon. Though he probably means to say that they were attacked by Geodude. Horace wonders if there is something that they can do for them, because he feels sorry for them, because they made it all the way here and they were so close to meeting Articuno. But Goh says that even so, this is their mission, showing that he does not really care for other people. Ash exclaims that Horace is really kind. but Horace says that he did not mean to appear kind. So they all soon find a massive waterfall, though they can't see where the waterfall leads. But with Caterpie's help, they are able to reach the place where the water is falling. Yes, Caterpie was helpful yet again. Maybe it was the right choice to bring Caterpie, but I still think that it's insane that Goh brought Caterpie along. The place they all get to thanks to Caterpie is a massive ice-covered cave that has water flowing through it, and it also has an opening on the ceiling. They all then spot what they describe as an ice temple on the other side of the body of water. Just as they wonder about everything that they are looking at, Gary appears behind them and he says, "Good grief, I did not expect to see you two here." Referring to Ash and Goh, of course. Now I love that while Ash is surprised to see Gary here, Goh is instead like, "Oh no, not this guy again," with an annoyed expression. Goh then angrily demands to know why Gary said "good grief." Gary says with a flippant pose that he said "good grief" because he is irritated, because it takes nothing to rile up Goh. This angers Goh to the point that his head is emanating steam. Careful there, you might melt all the ice around you. Horace wonders if Ash and Goh know this person. Ash says yes, and that he, meaning Gary, is not a bad person, despite the fact that he appears to be one. Gary and Horace then introduce themselves to each other and they shake hands. Horace then tells Gary that they should all work together going forward. This angers Goh, who tells Horace not to decide this. Clearly Goh does not want to work with Gary. But Horace says that Gary even waited for them here. Though Goh points out that Gary only waited because you can't have a raid battle with just one person. Gary confirms that this is indeed the reason why he waited, and he says that he believes that completing the mission should be the priority. This is why I said earlier that I think that this time there was only one mission, because a raid battle is a team effort, meaning that it would only make sense to have this as a mission if you give a said mission to several people, so that a lot of people show up to battle Articuno, which would allow for a raid battle. Therefore, I think that every challenger, or at least a lot of them, got this same mission, and they had no say in the matter, because if given a choice, a lot of people, Goh included, would have probably chosen another mission, which means that there would have been less people here on Seafoam Islands for a raid battle. And not everyone has a friend like Ash. Though in the end, a lot of people dropped out, meaning that giving the same mission to a lot of people did not help much. But at least, Gary and Horace are here to help Ash and Goh. So Gary then puts an inflatable raft on the water. And he says that he believes that Articuno is across from where they are now. So he tells Goh to decide if they will work together or not. Goh is hesitant even after Ash and Horace tell him to agree. But Goh does eventually agree to work together after Gary says to him, "You are not scared, are you?" Goh never fails to fall for the obvious taunts that Gary loves to employ. Though in this situation, it makes sense to just work together with Gary, since this way they have more people to battle Articuno with. Also, Gary has the raft, which they need to get across. So, everyone crosses the water with the raft. They end up in front of this massive cluster of ice. Gary senses that something is amiss, and he tells everyone to back away. But before they can, Articuno emerges from behind the ice, breaking the ice in the process, which makes icicles rain on everyone. A drone then appears. The drone says that it has an official announcement from Project Mew, which is that you can only use up to 3 Pokemon for the raid battle, and that the battle will be recorded. Since they can only use 3 Pokemon, it ended up being okay that Goh brought Caterpie and Grookey along, since 3 of his Pokemon won't have to battle. Still, unless this was specified in the mission parameters, Goh had no way of knowing that this would be the case, and thus he should have brought along his 6 strongest Pokemon, fully intending to use them all to battle Articuno. So Articuno takes flight and It charges everyone. It's almost like Articuno knows what's up, that it's the boss of this raid battle. Gary then says, here we go, get ready. And Goh rudely says, you don't need to tell me. So everyone then sends out their first Pokemon and the raid battle finally begins. Gary sends out Tyranitar, Goh sends out Darmanitan, Ash sends out SIrfetch'd, and Horace sends out a female Indeedee. So Gary reveals that he has a Tyranitar, which is cool, and this might be a reference to the fact that Blue, Gary's counterpart in the games, does use a Tyranitar. Also, this is the first time that Gary has revealed a new Pokemon since the final episode of the Ruby and Sapphire series. Also, Tyranitar is a great choice to use against Articuno, who has a double weakness to rock. Horace reveals that he has a female Indeedee, a psychic-type Pokemon, which is fitting, since Horace wants to track down every psychic-type Pokemon. Also, SIrfetch'd is a terrible choice against Articuno, while Darmanitan is a good choice. Now, it's funny that this first batch of Pokemon get more screen time here in this review than what they get in the actual episode, since they are all taken out by a single blizzard attack from Articuno, which is just crazy, disappointing, and unrealistic. It's unrealistic because one of these Pokemon has a resistance to ice. None of them are weak to ice, and all of them had full HP. It's disappointing because we don't get to see any of them battle. This is especially disappointing because this is the first time we see Gary's Tyranitar. Also, all of these Pokemon end up doing absolutely nothing at all. They are just here to fill a spot on the team. Finally, it's crazy that they were all taken out so fast because it makes Articuno feel that much more powerful, which is probably why the writers had this happen. They wanted to portray Articuno's massive power. Or rather, they got this first batch of Pokemon out of the way fast, because at this point, there's not much time left in the episode, so they can't really have the first wave of Pokemon on screen for too long, since there are still 2 more waves to go through. But still, come on, at least have them attack once. Now everyone is understandably shocked, because their first Pokemon was defeated very easily. But Gary says that they should keep calm and that they should send out their next Pokemon. So Gary sends out Umbreon, Goh sends out Cinderace, Ash sends out Lucario, and Horace sends out Gardevoir. It is nice to see Gary's Umbreon again after so long. Goh sent out another good choice, while Ash sent out a good choice this time. And Horace reveals that he has a Gardevoir, another psychic-type Pokemon. So Umbreon uses Confuse Ray, which hits Articuno. However, Articuno counters by using Sheer Cold, which immediately knocks Umbreon out cold. In this case, it is acceptable and believable that a Pokemon is taken out in one hit by Articuno, since Sheer Cold is a one-hit knockout move. Also, I just love Sheer Cold's name in Japanese, which is Absolute Zero. Gary withdraws Umbreon and he tells the other Pokemon to battle from a distance, since they will be swept by Sheer Cold if they stay close. So the other Pokemon back away. The effects of Confuse Ray then kick in and Articuno ends up confused. Seizing the opportunity, Lucario and Cinderace attack with Aura Sphere and Pyro Ball respectively, which hit Articuno. Now Lucario and Cinderace attack together so often that I am convinced that they just have this same animation saved somewhere, and they drag and drop it when they need it. They just change the background as needed. So Articuno's confusion wears off, and Articuno counterattacks with Ice Shard. But Gardevoir uses Reflect to block the attack. Now Gary says that using Reflect was a good choice. And indeed it is, since Reflect only works on physical moves, and Ice Shard is a physical move. Gary then sends out his final Pokemon, Arcanine, which is a great choice, and it is great to see Gary's Arcanine again after so long, and to see an Arcanine again in the anime after so long. Now I do feel that Arcanine's coloration looks lighter than normal. For a second, I thought that Gary's Arcanine turned into a shiny Arcanine somehow. But to be fair, the last time we saw an Arcanine in the anime was 553 episodes and 12 years ago. So perhaps Arcanine looks a little off here, because this is the first Arcanine we see in the anime after 12 years worth of changes and improvements to the art style and animation. So Lucario, Cinderace, and Gardevoir attack together, with Aura Sphere, Pyro Ball, and Moonblast, respectively, which hit Articuno. However, despite taking 3 direct hits, Articuno is unfazed, and it counterattacks immediately with its own 3 hits, by using Triple Axle. But Gardevoir blocks the attack with Reflect. However, the final kick of Triple Axle breaks through the Reflect, and all the Pokemon are knocked back. But as Gary points out, Reflect did still reduce Triple Axle's power in half. Gary then tells Lucario and Cinderace to grab onto Articuno. But Goh exclaims, "Don't just order them around," showing that he is still against working with Gary. Ash does tell Goh that they should do what Gary says. And, after some hesitation, Goh tells Cinderace to do what Gary said. Now I love that Cinderace stands up and it's like, really bro? You really expect me to do that in this condition? While Lucario is just exhausted. But they both still do what they were told to do. Cinderace does manage to climb onto Articuno. However, Lucario is unable to do the same. Cinderace then hits Articuno with Blaze Kick, while Arcanine and Lucario hit Articuno with Flamethrower and Steel Beam respectively. So Articuno is hit with 3 super effective hits, and Cinderace jumps down from Articuno's back in the process. Gardevoir then uses Heal Pulse to heal Cinderace. Goh thanks Horace for the help, and he tells Ash that they should keep the pressure on Articuno. But Gary says that they should not do this since Articuno is no pushover. But Goh decides to ignore Gary's warning. He has Cinderace use Blaze Kick. Ash follows Goh by having Lucario use Aura Sphere. But Articuno proves Gary right by unleashing a powerful Blizzard that defeats Lucario, Cinderace, and Gardevoir. Now Gardevoir did use Light Screen, but the Blizzard was far too strong. This does, however, show that Horace is definitely playing the role of full support, since he is running dual screens and heal pulse on Gardevoir. It's cool that he does this, and Horace is the teammate we all want to have in a situation like this. While the other 3 Pokemon are taken out, Arcanine avoids being knocked out as well by blocking the Blizzard with Flamethrower. So Ash, Goh, and Horace send out their final Pokemon, which are Pikachu, Boldore, and Bayleaf respectively, which are 2 good choices and a bad choice respectively. Horace tells Goh that they have to work together. Goh says that he knows this already, but Horace says that Goh does not understand, because Gary has been trying to work as a team this whole time, while Goh has not done the same. Gary then says that in raid battles you need to cooperate as a team. Since this is basic knowledge, he did not think that he had to bring it up. This annoys Goh. Gary then says that from now on, everyone should follow his commands. He says that Bayleaf should use Bind Whip to hold Articuno in place, while the other Pokemon attack the restrained Articuno. Bayleaf does manage to hold Articuno with Bind Whip, which allows Pikachu and Arcanine to land super effective direct hits with Thunderbolt and Flamethrower respectively. But stubborn Goh is still unsure of whether he wants to follow Gary or not, so he tells Boldore to use Stone Edge too late. Articuno breaks free before the Stone Edge can make contact, which is a shame since this would have really hurt Articuno. After breaking free, Articuno gets ready to attack. Gary says that all the Pokemon should split up, because Articuno might use Sheer Cold. But Goh disagrees, saying that Articuno might use Blizzard instead, which will wipe out all the Pokemon if they are spread out. So Goh says that all the Pokemon should take cover behind Boldore. Articuno ends up using Sheer Cold, proving Gary right again in the process. Boldore is taken out first since it is up front, while Pikachu and Bayleaf are next in line to be dispatched. Arcanine does manage to save Bayleaf, but only by getting knocked out instead alongside the Pikachu. So only Bayleaf is left standing. Now, I said before that it's acceptable and believable that Sheer Cold scores one-hit knockouts. What is not acceptable or believable is that a move that has 30% accuracy lands every time, to the point that it is even scoring multi-kills, or rather, multi-knockouts. Goh tells Horace that Bayleaf can't fight Articuno alone, but Horace says that they must try. So Bayleaf uses Energy Ball, but Articuno easily shrugs off the attack, and it uses Blizzard to knock out Bayleaf. Articuno then leaves the cave. The drone then says that the raid battle is now over, and everyone should wait for contact from HQ. Goh is left speechless, and he says that he wouldn't have stood a chance on his own. Yeah, no kidding. Horace says that this is not true, that he was able to focus on supporting the team because Goh was the vanguard of the team. But Gary says that Horace is too optimistic, that the raid battle would have gone better if Goh was not so selfish. Which is the absolute truth, since they basically lost the battle because of Goh. And I honestly thought that Goh would not clear the mission, because he was so selfish and because he refused to cooperate with Gary. Tsurugi then calls the three challengers. He thanks them for taking part in the mission since the battle led to the acquisition of some valuable data on Articuno, and he sends them all their prize, 3 Mew tokens. Now this baffled me when I was watching the episode, because I honestly felt that Goh deserved to get nothing, or at least that he should get less than what Gary and Horace get. Though the mission was just to have a raid battle, not to have a raid battle while working as a team, so Goh did in fact complete the mission, but still, I felt that he deserved some sort of penalty, and thankfully, Tsurugi then says that Gary gets an extra token for his excellent leadership, while Horace gets an extra token for his dedication to teamwork. While Goh gets no extra tokens as it should be. This did make things better for me, but I still feel that Goh received more than what he deserved. Being the sore and stubborn loser that he is, Goh with a dissatisfied and cocky expression wonders if teamwork will really be necessary for finding Mew. Tsurugi says that Goh should think about this on his own, which leaves Goh dejected. However, Asahi intervenes. She says that a certain someone was also selfish and a bad team player, and yet he somehow still became a chaser. She is of course referring to Tsurugi. I love that Tsurugi ends the call right away since he knows that Asahi is talking about him, while Asahi just smiles innocently. Unfortunately, Asahi's comment gives Goh hope that he can still join Project Mew without changing his ways. I feel that this is wrong, because what's the point of teaching Goh that teamwork is important and that being selfish is not good if you are then going to say, oh, but it's fine, you can still succeed without actually having to improve and learn. It feels like Goh's glaring flaws are just being forgiven. The episode then cuts to a dock back on the mainland. Horace tells Goh to cheer up, that there will be more missions in the future so Goh can still make it into Project Mew if he keeps trying. Goh thanks Horace for the encouragement, but Gary says that being kind can sometimes be cruel. That accepting someone who isn't ready, letting them have hopes and dreams, and pushing them to go beyond their means can lead to the worst possible outcome. Goh wonders what Gary means. Seriously, Goh? Is there anything you do understand? Gary says that he only cooperated with Goh this time because the mission demanded it, but that challengers have no need to be friends with each other. Ash intervenes, saying that they should all just help each other as friends, but Gary says that Ash is as naive as ever. Gary then says that he agrees with the strict mentality that Tsurugi has, because without such a mentality, they won't find Mew. Gary then says you are starting to realize this now, right, Goh? Goh recalls when he first met Tsurugi, and he does indeed realize that Gary is right. Goh then points out that Gary just called him by his name for the first time. Gary responds with a classic cocky smile. Goh then says by provoking people, you make them realize something new. I am starting to understand you as well, Gary. Gary points out that Goh just called him by his name for the first time as well. Gary then says that he looks forward to the next time he and Goh meet. He then bids Goh farewell, and that's the episode. So overall, this was a good episode. It was great to see Gary and Horace again, especially because they got to battle alongside Ash and Goh, and because we learned that Gary has a Tyranitar and that Horace has a Gardevoir and a female Indeedee. It's cool that Horace is also trying to join Project Mew, since it means we will surely see him again. And it's nice that we learned what his goal is, apart from finding Celebi. His current objective is very similar to Goh's current objective, which does feel unoriginal, yes, but since Horace and Goh are childhood friends that had similar dreams to begin with, I think that it's nice and fitting that they are now following similar paths to get to their respective dreams, which are again very much alike. The raid battle against Articuno was pretty cool, especially with the emphasis on teamwork and the team composition / setup. It was cool to see Gary be the team leader that strategizes and commands the others effectively, while Horace was the dedicated team support that provided shields and heals, while Ash and Goh were the DPS / tanks. However, I hate that the battle was cut short unnecessarily, which is why the first wave of Pokemon was taken out so fast, and they ended up not doing anything as a result, which is a huge disappointment. I think that some of the early parts of the episode could have been cut so that the battle could have been expanded and thus improved. Sure, some of the early parts of the episode did help to raise the stakes by making the search for Articuno its own little mission / trial before the real mission. And we got to see that there are many other challengers out there, and that not all of them get to complete every mission they get. We learned that Project Mew is no walk in the park, that there are a lot of people that are trying to become chasers. This makes Project Mew feel more real, more serious, and more significant. But still, the raid battle was ultimately the main attraction of this episode and the actual mission that everyone was trying to complete. So some of the early parts of the episode could have been removed in order to extend the raid battle, especially parts that were not really needed, like Goh catching Golbat and Graveler. My other major gripe with the episode is that I really hated Goh's attitude and behavior throughout the episode. And I especially hate that he still got 3 Mew tokens in the end. Sure, he still did what the mission was asking for, but in the end, they lost the raid battle because of Goh's selfishness. And yet, Goh was not penalized for this. And Asa, he pretty much excused Goh's behavior, meaning that the valuable lessons that Goh could have learned in this episode about teamwork, cooperation, and selflessness were ultimately undercut, which pretty much decreases the value of this episode. Starting to understand and respect Gary is the only thing that Goh got from this episode, which is a good start, yes, but it's not quite enough. But that's the video, as always. Leave your own thoughts down in the comments below. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did and would like to see more like it, then please consider subscribing to my channel. I love Pokemon and I love making videos on both the anime and the games. Also, please consider clicking the links on screen so that you can check out more videos like this right away. Thank you very much for watching, and let's meet again in the next video.